Good morning, everyone. We are warmly welcoming you to the workshop about undergraduate research and training. So I hope you can learn a lot of things in this workshop. We warmly welcome our guest speaker, Dr. Sadira Bandara, as well as co-organizer, Ms. Rooney Bandara. So this workshop is organized by the Quality Assurance cell of the Faculty of Agricultural Sciences. So I kindly remember Dr. Anusha Vijayasekara, and as well as Professor Darshani Ruwandipika, who is the director of Quality Assurance Center in Sabaragamuwa University. So we'll have a small biography of Dr. Sadira Bandara. I warmly invite him to do the training for you. I hope it will be an eventful one for all of you. Thank you very much.
Okay, good morning, everybody. But thank you for inviting me to this sort of a workshop. It's not quite a workshop. It's kind of going to be a discussion. Can you hear me very well? Okay. So let me start. I think there was a very long topic given. I'm not going to do that particular topic. I'm going to do something different. Okay, there you go. Okay. Sure. Okay. Right. So I'm going to do about two things today. First is research, and the next one is on industrial training. And I understand that all of you are in your third year, second semester, and you haven't done any, well, let's say you haven't done any formal research so far, and you haven't started any kind of research work either. And in about 6 or 7 months, you're going to start some research work. Right. So, before we start the conversation, I would like to give you a small problem to work out. I've asked you to bring a piece of paper and a pen. So this is the problem. This is kind of a classic problem. So we have a tunnel which is about 1 kilometer long, and we have a truck going through it. At some point, the truck gets stuck in the tunnel. Okay, so it can't move. Either it can't reverse, it can't go forward. So it's stuck. So the question is, how are you going to get the truck out of the tunnel with the least damage to both the tunnel and the truck? Do you understand the question? Okay, I'll give you 5 minutes. Let's work out a solution. You can either discuss with your friends, that's fine, but don't search on Google. It's not on Google, I promise, but let's keep the phones out for a moment. And let's work out a solution. I'll give you 5 minutes, exactly 5 minutes. Let's see where we end up. If somebody needs an explanation of the question, I can do it again. But let me briefly say, there's a tunnel which is 1 kilometer long, so it's a very long tunnel. And there's a truck with a lot of things inside it, and at some point at the midway, that means at the 500-meter mark, it gets stuck in the tunnel, which means it can't move forward, it can't move backwards. How are you going to get the truck out of the tunnel with the least damage to the tunnel or the truck? That's the question. Okay, there are about 3 minutes left now. Let's work out a solution. Less than 1 minute to go. Okay, I think that's about time. In fact, this question was inspired by a real incident that was taken place in Sri Lanka. Perhaps you have heard this story. Do you know the Sutta Vittapugala? Yes. Do you know the story? Yes. Some of might know. We'll come to that story later on. Okay, I don't want to expose the answer right now. We'll come back to this problem. Just keep the answers with you. But let's move forward. Right, so this is this is the Cambridge Dictionary definition of research. Just read it. So what it basically means is that research is the creation of knowledge, or using the current knowledge and information to create new knowledge. That's the basic idea of research. And there are some steps of research. We're going to go through each and every one as we move forward. But this is the first step, choosing a topic. Right. Now, as with my conversation that I had earlier with Dr. Champika, I kind of find out that the research here is kind of different, or the process is a bit different from what we do at my faculty. I'm from the Faculty of Applied Sciences. But we'll see. So when you choose a topic, it has to be interesting to you Okay, you are the first person that should be interested in. So you might be given a topic by someone else, your supervisor or the company that you're going to work with, but you have to make sure that it's interesting to you. Okay? If you're not fond of the topic, if you're not really interested, if you think it's not your thing, you have to tell the supervisor or the person that is giving you the topic that it's not your thing, that it's not really interesting to you. Okay? If it's not interesting to you, then you're not going to do it very well. You're not going to find new things. You're not going to be crazy about it. Unless you're crazy about something, you're not going to end it successfully. All right? So when you choose a topic, make sure that interests you, and it is the best that you come up with the topic yourself and give it to your supervisor. If it's a company that you're going to work in, that chance is going to be very low, but if you're going to do your research here, please come up with a topic at a very early stage and present it to your supervisor or the prospective supervisor and see how it goes. Okay? So that's the best option you have. Before you are given a topic, you come up with a topic and you give it to your supervisor or the person you're going to work with. Right. Once you have a topic, you have to make sure that it can be done. All right? Now, if your research is about sending a rocket to Mars, that's a nice topic, but you can't do it here, especially at this level. So you have to make sure it's feasible. So when you talk about being feasible, I'm talking about three things. First is the cost. Especially these days, there's a very bad financial situation in Sri Lanka, so we don't have the chemicals, we don't have the research equipment coming to the universities. So the cost is kind of a tricky thing that we have to consider these days. But undergraduate research doesn't take that much of money, but still you have to think about it. You have to make sure that you have the money and it's cost effective, and you have the resources at the university or at the company that you're going to work at to do your research. And also, you are given roughly 6 months, not 6 months even, 15 weeks or 16 weeks to complete your research. So it should be feasible in time as well, right? And the third is you have to make sure that it can be done at the place that you're going to work at, right? The first thing I mentioned, that you have the resources, you have the labs. If you're going to do it in a lab, you have to make sure that that kind of lab things exist at the place you're going to work at, right? In Sri Lanka, that we have very kind of limited kind of lab facilities at universities. Sometimes you find better facilities at research institutions. There are government institutions, there are private institutions that you can go and work at. And don't be afraid to talk to your supervisor that if you find a place that you think you can work at, just pitch it to your supervisor. Okay? The supervisors are not evil. The professors are not evil, at least not all the time. There are sometimes evil, but at least not all the time. If you have a good idea, just pitch it. They will listen to you. Right. And once you have chosen a topic, you want to explore a little bit. So the first thing I would do is to have a conversation with your friends, your teachers, and sometimes the general public. If you go, especially if you go to the farm, there might be people who work at the farm, I guess, the non-academic staff. Have a conversation with them as well. They have different kinds of experiences, right? So have a conversation, then you'll get more idea about the topic that you're going to do. Now think again. You have only 15 or 16 weeks to complete your research, so you can't change the topic in the midway. Okay, so once you have selected a topic, you have to do it somehow. So it's important that you have these conversations at the very beginning of this research process. And the next thing is that once you have a topic, you have to make sure that it's something new. Okay, that it's innovative, or it can have some impact on the society or the community that you're going to work with. People come up with innovations like hundreds of thousands of times in a day, all right? Not all those innovations are very productive or very impactful. They have most of them have no use. I think the most recent example in Sri Lanka has been the cars that run by water. There has been a trend, right, that people have come up with this kind of innovation that they claim that they have found a vehicle that can be run by water. But I'm a physics guy, so it's physically impossible. So you might think that you have a brilliant idea, but you have to make sure that it's a new idea and it actually can work and it can result in some final outcome that is beneficial to the society or the country or the community that you're in. Okay, so my question, once you have a topic finalized, what's the next thing you're going to do? Write it down. I'll give you a few seconds. Once you have finalized with the topic, what do you think you should do next? Okay, if you're in the audience, you have to write the answer no matter who you are. You too, Dr. Champaga. Okay. Right. So the question is simple. You have a topic, you have had a conversation with people, you know what you're going to do. What's the next step? By the way, write your name on the top of your paper. At the end of, we are going to collect it and think it's going to be considered as an assignment, right? Yes. So take it seriously. And I'm going to read your answers as I walk around. I thought of having a Google form to do this, but I understand that there are difficulties in bringing laptops for everybody, so this is fine too. Right. I think most people had written the answer that I expected they would. That is literature review, or evaluating the literature. Going through the previous research that has been done that is close to your topic. Okay, that's the standard thing to do, but I usually do things in a different way. In fact, I don't recommend reading the literature straight away once you have had the topic. This is what I usually do. I just watch movies about a week. Now I understand you don't have that much time. You have only 15 weeks, and your supervisor is not going to let you watch movies or take time off. Once you've come with the topic, your supervisor would like you to go through the literature, right? But I don't recommend that. Now here's the thing. You might have heard this term, thinking outside the box, right? So what happens when you go through these previous projects and the literature is that you're going to actually construct this box. You're going to be limited by the things that the people have done in the past. Okay, so you'll be a bit afraid to think about the things that you can do outside the people have done previously. So you're constructing the box. When you construct the box, it will be really hard to think outside the box. So what I would do is stop creating the box first. That's why I would just take time off, a week or two, Just watch movies. And when you do that, sometimes things will come to your mind about your research. You don't have to think about your research, but things will come to your mind about things that you can do with your research, even without any force. Things will come to your mind. Okay, and you can play with those for about a week or two. Then you are not limited by any restrictions. You have no idea what people have done earlier, okay? And you have no idea about the restrictions in your research. So just give it a time. And as I said before, it's really hard to do when you do an undergraduate research. But what you can do is come up with a research topic very early. Then you have time for all these things. Okay? Right. So I recommend not going to the literature review directly, although it is not recommended by the rest of the people. I don't know about Dr. Champika, but many people would recommend looking at the literature straight away. It's just me. I wouldn't do it. Just give it a time. Okay? You'll have no idea the things that you're going to think about. You can imagine things. Okay? So once you have the restrictions on, it's really hard to imagine or think outside the box. So try it if you get time. Right. And it's also a good time to think about the 5 W's. Okay. So why you do this topic, why one should do that topic, and who it's going to benefit or who's going to be interested in that, and where can you do it, and where the final outcome will be useful in your country or globally or in the area, in your community, and when. If your research topic is current, if it's useful currently, this day, or is it going to be useful in future? Things like that. And what? What are the things you're going to need to do this research without hindrance? So take time to think of those things. Then you come to the literature evaluation. So there are 2 websites called Scopus and Web of Science. I think it's not free in Sri Lanka. I have 2 accounts in these, so I use those 2 accounts. But you're not going to get access to those 2. Someday you will, but so maybe you can use the old Google maybe. Okay, Google Scholar maybe, but Google will work as well. At this level, there are certain literature that is hidden from Google, but at this level, I don't think that there will be anything that you wouldn't find on Google. Okay, the articles. So just use Google. That should be fine. Or Google Scholar in particular. You can use ResearchGate, but I think Google Scholar has a bigger database. Anyway, so you go to literature review, and when you search, you have to set up a search criteria. You have to filter the results with the range of with the time. Okay, you have to decide on what kind of papers you're looking at, how old they should be or how new they should be, and the demography. This is quite important when it comes to social sciences. If you're to do some sort of a survey, then the demography is. You know the meaning of demography. Demography refers to the part of the population. Okay, so you have to decide on that when you search through the research papers, and the geography, whether you're looking at studies that's done in your country or globally or an area specific to where you live, and what kind of methods that you're looking at. Okay. Then you have to find keywords that is related to your topic, use them to search on Google. That's exactly what you do when you do any other kind of Google search. Then the third thing, this is important, be open. What I mean is that, so when you think of a topic, you have an idea or you have an assumption how you're going to do about it, and how things happen, okay? And you'll encounter some articles that will have conflict with what you think, that will be opposite to what you think. Okay, just because a research article says something otherwise, you should not drop those articles. You have to refer to them. Those are the most important ones, actually. Okay? So don't be biased when you're going through these research papers, especially the ones that is conflicting. And once you've found interesting articles, you have to go through the references, okay? So that's how you jump from one article to the other, and that's how you connect the dots. That's how you collect references. And once you've found references, you have to use a reference management system to store them so that you don't miss them, especially when you are writing reports or writing a thesis or a research paper. I'll come to the reference management, but I'm not sure if this is quite clear. This is from a research article, in fact, on the best way to do a literature search. So when you come across an article that you have found using keywords, first read the title. If it's not interesting, just drop it, okay? And if it seems it's related to your topic, just read the abstract and the summary and the conclusion. Don't read what's in the middle. Just read the abstract and the conclusion. And if you find any sort of similarity or any sort of relationship with your topic in the content that you find in the abstract, on the conclusion, and if you think the conclusions are well done or precise, then you can read the entire article, okay? All right, so you don't read the method or even the introduction. First, abstract, then the conclusion. If it matches, you read the entire. If not, you go back, you find another article. So that would be a good way to do your literature research. And once you've found good articles, as I said, you have to manage them in a reference management systems. If you're working with Word, you're going to write your articles in Word. You can use these two, the EndNote and Mendeley. Those are the two softwares that you can use for reference management. And if you're using what we call LaTeX, there's something called BibTeX, which you can use for reference management. So these three are the best options we have when it comes to reference management. These are pretty self-explanatory. Okay, you can easily learn them, how to use these tools. Okay, and next is the most important part. Once you have, now this is with the assumption that you came up with this topic. Okay, so once you've found the topic, you've decided on that, you found the literature, then you have to talk to your supervisor. You have to convince your supervisor about this topic, right? So you have to be very precise. You have to tell him the problem, the hypothesis. I'll come to the hypothesis later on. Then you have to explain how it can be done, what kind of solution that he can give, and how long it's going to take, the cost, the facilities that you need, and you have to convince him that there will be an actual result, an outcome that is beneficial or that is useful. So that's going to be a very hard conversation, but it can be done if you have completed the previous steps successfully. Okay, so once you're done with the literature, you have convinced your supervisor, then you have to create the hypothesis. What do you mean by hypothesis? Okay. So hypothesis is basically sort of an assumption. It's simply put. So you have a problem, and you think that this is the reason why it happens, or this is how it can be solved. So that's basically what a hypothesis means. So it's, simply put, it's an assumption on how things work or what the reason is. So let's do an exercise. This is a very famous problem. Okay? So the problem is The gender pay gap in the United States is 11%. What it means is that on average, women earn 11% less than men on average. Okay. So what you're going to do is you're going to write down the reasons that you think which result in this so-called gender pay gap. I'll give you about 5 minutes. There can be one reason, there can be one more than one. We'll see. Again, don't use your phone. You can have a discussion with your friends, that's fine. But let's list a few things. If you don't understand the question, please raise your hand. I can come to you and explain to you. Okay, let's take only one more minute, then we can move on. Okay, that's enough time. Now, how many people came up with just one reason? Can you hands up? If you listed only one reason, can you raise your hand? 2? 3? Okay, I said raise your hand. Okay, 4? 5? Okay, 6? More than 6? There's 1 6, I guess. More than 6? 7? No. In fact, there are 12 reasons according to latest, not findings, but latest studies. There are 12 reasons for this, and none of them is the gender inequality, the so-called gender inequality. Okay. All right, so that's a different thing. You can actually go through the internet. You can find these 12 reasons. I'm not going to list them now because this is not about it. But what I wanted to tell you is that for a single problem, there can be many reasons, okay, or many variables or many parameters that causes that problem. Okay, shall we come back to this exercise? Can one of you tell me the solution to this exercise? If it's in singular, that's fine too.
We can open the valve and remove the air from the tires. Then we can reduce the height of the vehicle. And furthermore, we can remove things on the truck. It will helpful to reduce the damage to the vehicle.
Okay. Now the thing is, if we can go back to the slide, if we remove things, what do you think will happen to the truck? It's going to go up further because the weight is going to be less. So it's going to complicate the problem. And your solution is great. So you just let some air out of the tires, then the top will get a lower. And it can move. The problem is, if you do that, it's going to be not good for the tires either. Okay? Especially, it has to go for 500 meters with low pressure. And with such weight in trucks, that's not really good. So it's going to cause some damage. Okay, so again, the solution is not that as simple. There are so many parameters that you have to think about. Okay? And this is one of the mistakes we do when we create hypotheses. We fail to realize that a single problem can have so many factors or so many reasons, so many variables, so many parameters. Okay? This is a very common mistake that's done in social sciences and in climate science as well, which is related to your studies. Okay, those are the two things that we make, the two common fields that we make this mistake. So, you have to make sure that you have all the variables or all the reasons listed out. We call them multivariate problems. That means it has multiple variables associated, okay? But in a research, especially in this kind of research that you're going to do, where you have only 15 weeks, you can't address all these variables. So you have to choose only one or two, depending on the resources and the time you have. You're going to select only one or two, and you're going to do your research on those. And at the same time, you have to make sure that the other variables are controlled. Okay, so control experiments, something like that. So, I just wanted to highlight this mistake that you do, okay? Forgetting about the variables. So the literature review helps. Right, so once we have created the hypothesis, we have to design the process, the method, okay? And how to collect the data and how the data is analyzed. So this is all done, this is all called the methodology in general. So this is what we have to do next. So first you have to decide how to do this, what kind of techniques or scientific techniques that is going to be involved, and what's the process or what's the order of these techniques that you're going to use to do the experiment, and how feasible. Again, the feasibility is a very important factor. If you can do this in the resources or in the locations or the labs that you are given to, and how to do, if you collect the data, how to analyze those data, and you have to validate these data. Okay, validation is it's a different topic. In fact, I'm not going to stress on that right now. And how to present the results, or what kind of results you're going to get, and what kind of data you're going to keep. Okay, right. So all these should be designed, all these should be decided at the beginning of your research process, or just before you start your actual physical work on the research. Right, now this is something I wanted to skip, but I thought this might help you a little bit. So I'm not going to explain too much about this, but there are two kinds of research, or two kinds of methodologies that we use in research, quantitative and qualitative. You mostly will do quantitative work, or quantitative methodologies. And the research in social sciences mostly, and also in business is related to qualitative research. But just read what's on the slide, and I'll explain briefly, very briefly. But just read what's on the slide for a start. So in summary, in the kind of research that you do, we have a hypothesis at the very beginning, and we're going to test it. We're going to validate our hypothesis during the research. And as I said before, we identify all the variables that is associated with the topic or with the problem that you're going to solve. And we have the specific variables that we are going to test on. Okay. And again, this is quantitative research. That means your result is going to have numbers and statistics, graphs, things like that, but it's mostly quantitative. Okay, let's go to the next one, the next kind of differences. Let's go through these as well. This is some boring stuff, but it might help you. Right. Again, when it comes to quantitative research, it further emphasizes the specificity of the methods or the things that we do in quantitative research. The most important thing is the objectivity. That means any other researcher that follows the same procedure as you do should get the same result. And it doesn't matter how many times you try, you should get the same result using the same process. Okay? So in qualitative research, you don't get it. It's so subjective. Okay? It depends on the person who does the research. And it depends on the sample as well. Okay? The samples which have the same characteristics even. Okay? But in quantitative research, if you take different samples which have the same characteristics, you should get the same result. Okay. This is the last. Oh no, there's one more, I think. Let's read it. Okay, on this slide, what I want to, in fact, highlight is what has been said about the hypothesis. In scientific research, we have to have a hypothesis at the very beginning. Otherwise, you can't carry on, you can't design a process and do the experiment. But when it comes to qualitative research, especially in research in social sciences and humanities and business, there's no hypothesis at the beginning, mostly. Okay, you collect the data, and based on the data, you create the hypothesis. Okay, so at the end, when it comes to qualitative research, the hypothesis and the conclusion is the same, or is created at the same time, at the same point. Okay, but in scientific research, you have to have a hypothesis at the very beginning, then you make the conclusions at the very end. Right, that's what I wanted to stress from this slide. And this is the last slide on the differences between the two methods. Let's read it. What I wanted to stress on from this slide is that in scientific research, most of the experiments or most of the processes we do are controlled. If they're not controlled, at least we have to suppress some of the regimes or some of the data. Okay, we have to concentrate only a very specific set of data or the set of phenomena. Okay, so pretty focused when it comes to scientific research, but in qualitative research, it's a total different process. It's a total different phenomena. We don't have to worry about it, okay, because mostly you're going to deal with scientific research. Even if you do surveys and these kind of things in this, in the scientific field, it's going to be quantitative at the end. Right. So let's move on from here. All right. So the last one, once you have completed your research, then you have to show it to the world. Okay. Right. Or the dissemination part. So you can disseminate what you have done in different ways. So there are so much media and so many avenues that you can disseminate what you have done. You can tell the world what you have done. The abstracts or the presentations, the very basic form, we have something called extended abstracts, and the full papers in journal articles. In fact, at this date, I have no idea what's the difference between an extended abstract and a full paper. I have no idea. Okay. To me, both the same. Anyway, and there are project reports. You do the thesis, and then if you file for a patent, if you have a new product or an innovation, again, that's one way to disseminate what you have done. And then one unavoidable thing is to getting grants. If you're going to pursue a research career in future, then this is something you can't avoid, getting grants. Okay. Right, so these are the basic ways of disseminating what you have done. Today I'm not going to talk about how to write a paper or anything like that, because you haven't even started to research, okay? If I tell you anything about how to write a paper or how to write an abstract or anything like that, you're not going to remember it, let's be honest. Okay. So you don't give a damn about writing a research paper at this point, okay? So your next step is actually how to start a research and go on from there. So maybe somebody else will have this discussion with you once you have actually started research. Then when you actually have to worry about writing the articles or any written kind of dissemination of research, right? But since you're going to go to the industry, I might do this, okay? How to disseminate what you have done verbally. So mostly presentations, but there are other kind of things that I'm going to cover in the next half of this talk. But any questions up to now that you have about what we have done so far? Now this is open to you, okay? You can ask the questions in Sinhala. I can't do Tamil, I'm sorry. If there's, but in Sinhala or English, whatever it is, let's go for questions. This is not the end of the talk, okay? There's another part coming, but before that, on research, if you have any questions, you can ask. Maybe, okay, until you come up with questions, I think, all right, there were so many things that was told about me, but there's one more thing I should add maybe, because it is kind of related to research. So I lived in the United States for 7 years, and there are 50 states in the US, and I have traveled to 22 states, and I have been to Japan. I have climbed the Mount Fuji as well, and more than 90% of the expenses were covered by my research grants. So that's one reason to do a research, okay? So I was given a salary, but on top of that, I was paid for those trips, okay? So when you do a research, not just the papers and all the publications or theses or whatever it is, there's a lot more, okay? All right, so there are good reasons to do research and to do it well. Right, back to questions if you have any. Okay, no questions. Fine. Okay, let's take a break then. About 15 minutes. I think you had your cutlets the last time, but I heard that there's something to drink. Okay? I guess 15 minutes, you can take a break. Okay? Do whatever you want. I think there are going to be refreshments, but just stay, I guess. Welcome back. Right. So that was about research. Now, the next thing you're going to do, or you're going to do in your final semester, is that most of you are going to go to the industry. And what you're going to do is mostly going to be research. Not going to talk about that. But basically, the other social interactions you're going to have at the industry and other things that you're going to do besides research. Okay, let's focus on those. Right, so let's talk about the everyday interactions. Now, I'm talking about the interactions you're going to have at the industry in a working environment. Okay? Right, first question. Can you spot the fake smile in those two pictures? Let's say that one is number 1 and this one is number 2. Who says number 1 is the fake smile? Okay. Who says number 2 is the fake smile? My gosh. Right. How can you spot the fake smile? How do you smile with? Which part of your face is actually that you're smiling with, that you actually use to smile? What? Eyes. Okay? Okay. It's not between lovers. Okay? If you smile with any person, you actually smile with your eyes. So, which one is the real one then? 1 or 2? 1, right? Don't look at his lips or mouth, just look at his eyes. Right? Okay. So, my suggestion is when you smile, wherever you go, just smile sincerely. If you don't want to smile, just don't. The thing is, when you smile, the people will know that either you are smiling genuinely or it's just a fake one. Okay? So just be genuine. If you don't want to smile, don't. That's fine. But just be genuine and sincere. That's what I say. And this is a very common mistake that we do. Using brother, ayaka, nangimalli on strangers, on people that you have never met. In fact, I have a bad experience. So this was back in 2018. I was just here, okay, I'm a lecturer. I lived close to the Y Junction. And there were two girls from your faculty. So there was, I think, a period ceremony or something like 2018 or 2019, I can't remember exactly. But they didn't know who I was. So they were just going to house by house, collecting things, pirikara or money or things like that. And they came to my place. Now, my wife is also a lecturer here, so I opened the door, and they called me Ayya. Okay. Now, the first thing is I'm glad they didn't call me uncle. Okay, I'm glad about it. But you see, that was a bit awkward. I didn't want to correct them, okay? I was not in a mood. But that can be awkward when you call strangers with such things. Especially in a workplace, you'll realize that, especially in the private sector, these things are very important, okay? Sorry. So, please avoid these terms, at least on strangers. And also, if it's possible, especially in the formal settings, Informally, you can call your friends whatever you want, but in formal settings, try to avoid calling these terms, even on your best friend. Okay? Right. And, right. The next thing is how to do a handshake, a proper handshake. Usually, so there are some rules. The handshake was not in our culture, it came from somewhere else. So there are some rules in handshake, okay? All right, so if you meet someone who is older to you, or someone who's senior to you in the rank, in the job, the older person or the senior person has to extend his or her hand first, okay? Then only you can extend your hand back to that person. All right, so it's always the older person or the senior person who extends hand in a handshake. Okay. The rules are different when it comes to ladies, though. Okay. In some cultures, ladies don't shake hands with men. Okay. So we have to be sensitive to that. So when it comes to a lady, always the lady has to extend her hand. Then only the men can shake hands. Okay, this is common sense, but sometimes we forget, okay? And being conscious about these things help, especially, as I said, in the industrial settings. And how many shakes? Just 2 would be enough. We call it 2 pumps, and then you put your hands down, okay? Sorry. I think I pressed the wrong button. Here we go. Right. So, and also only vertical shakes like that, not like that. Okay, we call it the Trump shake. Have you seen Donald Trump shaking hands? It goes sideways and this way. So just 2 pumps down. Okay, that should be fine. And also you have to keep your body straight. Okay, so like this. You don't have to lean forward or lean backwards. Don't get so close to the other person. Okay, then the other person has to lean backwards, so it's going to be awkward. Right. So just keep your body straight and keep your hand at 90 degrees at the elbow. Okay. Now you can't measure the angle, of course, but just make a habit of it. Okay, just keep your body straight. This is kind of common sense, but it's always important to remember these things. And again, when it comes to ladies, there's a different rule. Ladies can sit while they're shaking hands, but men always have to stand. I don't know why, but okay. So 2 ladies can keep sitting and shake hands, but men always have to. Even a man shake hands with another man, they both have to stand up. I don't know. Okay, but that's the rule. Okay, there are reasons, but that's the way it is. Right. So once you've shook hands, the next what you're going to do is you're going to introduce yourselves to each other. Right. Again, there are some rules, but this is common sense. So when you introduce a person, okay? Dr. Champika, can you come up here, please? You put that. Can you come up here as well? On either side. So he's the senior person, he's the junior person. So if I'm the third person and I'm the person who knows both of them, first I have to introduce the junior person to the senior person first. Then I introduce him to the junior person first. And who starts the handshake? Yes. Shall we? There you go. All right. You can go back to your seats. Thank you. Okay, same goes with the age as well. So if you have a younger person, you have to introduce the younger person to the older person first, and vice versa. Right, so this is, again, I repeat, common sense. And there you go. A man has to be introduced to the lady first. All right, then you repeat it. So for some reason, ladies always complain about inequality, right? But we always keep them at the top. Just look at these things. Right. Anyway, so those are basic rules. And when you introduce the person, just the name. And if you are in a job setting, you just can mention their rank or anything like that, or how you are related to that person. Not too much, okay? All right, another common mistake that people make. Right, we use titles, Professor, Doctor, Mr., Mrs., and so on. And when we use a title, we always have to use the last name. Okay? What's your name, Buddha? Buddhika, what's the next name? What's your last name? Priyamal? Okay, so Buddhika Priyamal. So we don't call him Mr. Buddhika, it should be Mr. Priyamal, especially in a written document. So if you're writing a letter to a person, emails, fine, but if it's a formal letter that you write to a person, you always use the title with their last name or the full name, but never just the first name. Okay? Right. In informal settings, that's fine, especially in a country like Sri Lanka where when you speak to each other, Sri Lankans have long last names, right? So we don't want, sometimes we want to avoid the last names, we just call them by first name, and if you want to use a title, that's fine. But especially when you're writing letters and formal emails, please stick to this rule, okay? In Sri Lanka, it's fine, but in other countries, in Western countries, this can be viewed as being rude. Okay. Not now, but there were days that it was considered very rude. Right. And in everyday interactions, whether the person is a senior or a junior or an older or a younger, if it's a vice chancellor, it's just a student, doesn't matter, just use kind words. It doesn't hurt to use kind words, okay? Especially in an argument. If you just want to calm things down, just use kind words, that's fine, okay? Doesn't matter who you are, doesn't matter what you do. Using kind words does not make any harm, right? Okay. So just be generous with your words. And in a workplace, there are few things that you want to avoid. The first one is gossiping. Nobody likes gossiping. So if you tell a gossip about a person to another person, and the next time he will tell about that person, a gossip about that person to another person. So it goes like that. And there are registered gossipers in the workplaces, even in our staff. Okay, this person or these people are known as the people who gossip. Okay, that's not a good thing. All right, especially when you go to the industry, you're just starting your career. You don't want to be registered as a gossip. All right, so please try to avoid that. Then judging. Okay, we tend to judge people based on different things: their outfit, the way they speak, the food they bring, their interactions, and so on. And it's fine to judge, but the thing is sometimes you make comments on those judgments to others, and you'll be viewed as not a nice person. So try to avoid those things. And the negativity, okay? You always, when you're presented with new ideas, you are always negative, that you think that it can't be done, it has never been done before, we can't do it in this setting, it's Sri Lanka, it's this and that, and so on, okay? You never try, but just being negative. And this is not tolerated, especially in the private sector, you'll realize, okay? And what follows negativity is also complaining. You keep complaining. We complain about everything. We complain about weather, cricket, right, food, and so on. So you might not be seen as a nice person when you complain too much, when you complain about everything. Then blaming. This is very important. If you do something wrong, just own it. Just accept it, okay? Don't try to throw the blame on someone else. If you do something wrong, it's your responsibility. Just take it, okay? Your boss wouldn't punish you for being honest and for owning to your mistakes. But don't blame on others without reason. And the final one is dogmatism. You have certain beliefs and you stick to those beliefs, even if you are presented with evidence that contradicts your beliefs. Okay? So you have a certain prejudgments, presumptions, and you try to stick to those without any reason. If you have information that tells you that you're wrong, own it. You're wrong, that's fine. There's no shame in it. Right. Then let's come to conversations. You're going to engage in different kinds of conversations in a workplace, in the industry. The most common one is having meetings, right? I'm sure you have meetings even now. You have student meetings and so on. But in the workplace, it's entirely different. Right. So the meetings, just keep in mind, meetings are there for either solving a problem or just communicating a certain thing to another person. That's the only reason we have meetings for. Not to gossip or not to talk about something else or have a chit-chat or anything like that. All right. Especially in workplaces, meetings are very specific, time-driven, and they have very, very specific agendas, right? And it's also always good to know what's going to be discussed in the meeting in advance. Especially, this is important if you are the organizer of the meeting. You have to let the attendees in advance what the meeting is going to be on, so that the people who are going to attend the meeting, they know, and if there are any problems that they're going to solve, they can do some research before they come to the meeting, so there's no surprise there. And before come to the meeting, if there's a chance, if you know what's going to be discussed, again, you can research, or you can brainstorm with your friends, try to find solutions. Okay, this is very good. Going to be very effective at the actual meeting. And in the meeting, you have to wait until it's your moment to talk. Okay? Right. Now, everybody can talk, but listening is the most important part we can't have. Okay? So you have to listen to the others in meetings. You have to understand what they have to say. And sometimes the meetings can be quite chaotic, and sometimes people try to talk over you, okay? And sometimes you have heated exchanges. And one rule is, if you are talking about a certain thing or any point, if someone is interrupting, you don't stop your sentence in the midway. That's seen as weak. All right. So you have to complete at least that sentence. Then you can start listening to the other person, but never stop your sentence in the midway. Just complete it, then you can yield to the other person. And on the other hand, please listen, don't talk over the others. It's not going to help. If everybody's shouting at each other at the same time, it's not going to help. And this happens all the time, I think, in our meetings. Well, in our meetings, but the meetings that we have at universities, things get messy. So just try to just stay calm and just stay away from it. Just wait until everything calms down. You'll get a chance to tell your point, okay? Just wait until everything calms down, and you can just give your opinion on things. And most importantly, you have to be compact with what you say. You have to be brief and compact. In fact, just read it. Okay, so that's the very gist of being brief. Right, let's do a small exercise. Okay, this is a very old TV series called Blackadder. Have you watched it? It was in 1980s. It's on YouTube if you want to watch it. But can you recognize this person? Yes? You know him? Yeah. Okay. You have to raise your voice. I can't hear you. My name is Mr. When I the usual thing, okay? Sometimes you start the sentence and when it comes to the end, Mr. Bean, yeah. His name is Rowan Atkinson. This was in the 1980s. This was done well before. He was a comedian. This is well before Mr. Bean was done. And there's this scene, if you can take the video off the screen. There's this scene, junior. So this is in the military. This is in World War II. So he's a sergeant or a captain, and there's a low-ranking soldier who asks a question. Okay? So this is the question. And what I want you to do is, you have to tell me what exactly that question means. If you go through the question, you'll realize it's very chaotic. It's too messy. It's very confusing. Just read the question and just write down very briefly what it actually means or what the actual question was. Go on. So that's the other person, the low-ranking soldier. All right, I'll give you like a minute. Just read carefully and write down what you think or what the actual question was, but briefly. You have to write down something. Okay. Does anybody volunteer to tell us the answer? Not the answer, in fact, the question. Anyone? When you go to the industry, you can't just sit back. If you know the solution to something, you have to come up with it. You have to volunteer and let the others know. That's how others know that you are someone who's capable of doing things. So it's okay. You don't have to be correct all the time. You have to be confident enough to be wrong in public as well. So, anybody? No one? Okay. So when I go back to my faculty, when I'm going to tell them about the students at the Agri faculty, what should I tell them? I've already been told that the students at the Agri faculty hate reading. And now do I have to tell them that they hate speaking out as well? Oh, they're so shy, very laid back. What I'm going to tell them? Anyone? Say it again. Wait, I think you were right. I didn't hear it properly, but let's go ahead. Here we go.
What are the reasons for World War I?
Kind of, yes. So, this was the question actually. In fact, you can watch this on YouTube. Just type "How did the war start?" Blackadder on YouTube. You'll get that exact clip. It's a funny TV series if you want to watch it. And it's a British television series, so if you want to improve your English, that's a good one too. It has comedy, so you're going to enjoy it. Anyway, right, so the idea is be compact, brief, and be clear in what you say, especially in those meetings. Right. More things. When you say things, become, again, clear. Okay? And you have to know when to shut up, especially in the meetings. I'm using everyday memes that you see on Facebook, by the way. And if things get too messy in a meeting, you have to know when to walk away. Okay, if a meeting is not recoverable, just get the hell out of there. Okay? Right, now let's come to the presentations. In the industry, you're going to do many presentations in an ideal industry setting. You'll have different settings, I'm not quite sure, but at least you'll have to do one presentation in front of your colleagues and your bosses, right? You'll have to present the progress of your research or the work you have done or the things you have learned, right? So I think what I'm going to talk about next will be important for you. Right. When you do this, when you start a presentation, you have to set the mood. That means you have to give the idea or give the hint to the audience whether it's going to be a sort of a happy presentation or a strong one or a rough one or a sad one. Okay? So the first few words that you're going to tell them or you're going to tell to the audience is very important. Right? And don't rush. Take your time. Okay? Sometimes some people talk very quickly, some people don't. Okay? Don't be too slow, don't rush too much. Just take your time, and you have to be clear. That's the most important thing. Your audience should understand each and everything you say. And don't be monotonic. That means, so if I talk with the same pitch, it will be very boring to you, right? Like that. So you have to have variations in your pitch. You know what pitch means, right? Okay, so there are some speakers who have this, who have not gifted, have this unfortunate thing of being monotonic from their childhood. But it could be really boring to the audience. So you have to change your voice, your pitch all the time. And the next is your pitch. Okay, so girls tend to have a high pitch. The boys tend to have a deeper pitch, right? But usually it is recommended that even the girls speak with a deep voice. Okay, high pitch is not very tolerable. Okay, that's why in families, when the wife scolds or shouts at the husband, it's very intolerable because they do it to the high pitch. Okay, so high pitch is not recommended. Try to have a deeper pitch, right? And also, there are 3 kinds of voices. This is different from the pitch. There are 3 different kinds of voices that we talk about. The first one is called the nose voice. Okay, you talk with your nose, or you just talk with your throat, or you just go down deep. This is called a chest voice. Okay, the chest voice can be so powerful in convincing people, and the most famous speakers you have seen have this chest voice. You have to practice it. You have to train it. Okay, so once you have trained enough, you can achieve that. Okay, so that's different from the pitch. Okay, that's the voice, what we call the chest voice. In fact, there's this famous example. Have you seen this lady or have you heard this name? Her name is Elizabeth Holmes. She founded this company called Theranos. Okay, it's said to have revolutionized the medical testing, and now she's in jail because it was a fraud, and she cheated $4.5 billion. And one of the things, if you just Google her, just search her on YouTube, her voice was so deep. It was, what do you call that? Extraordinarily deep. Okay, and people say that his deep voice could convince the investors into investing. So the deep voice or the voice can do a lot of things. Okay, especially when it comes to convincing people. Just search on YouTube later on, and you realize that how deep her voice is. It was not a male voice, but it was a deep female voice, and people say that she actually faked her voice. It doesn't matter. She used it to do this fraud, $4.5 billion. It's not a small amount of money. Right. Next one is use of pace, or how fast you speak. Okay? So the speed at which you speak can be used to express the emotions. Okay? So if I want to express something quite emotional, I have to slow down. Okay? And there are some certain times that you speak so fast, especially in comedy. Okay? You must have seen stand-up comedians who does this in English, okay? Especially American comedians, they speak so fast when they do comedy. So you can change the pace or how fast you speak to express a kind of emotion. And also you can use the volume of your speech to express the importance. So if I want to grab your attention to something, I lower my voice so that you pay your attention. You keep focused to what I say, right? Okay. So these are the techniques that you can use in your speech. And use your hand gestures. Now, there's a podium here. A podium is a trap. Don't ever use the podium, okay? When you're at the podium, these are the things you're going to do. The first mistake is that you're going to keep your hand on it, then you're going to lean onto this, okay? All right, then you have lost your audience. So if you have to use the podium, don't even touch it. Just stay back like at least half a feet. So just don't touch it, it's a trap. The best thing to do is just keep walking, all right? And when you keep walking, you're going to have some exercise too, right? You have to move your head, all right? And use your hand use the hand gestures to express the importance of your speech, right? And if there are any emotions, you can show them with your face as well. All right, I think you know this already. And this is a very common mistake among speakers, among amateur speakers. We call these words fillers, ers, ms, and so on, okay? And sometimes there's this habit of using the word so at the beginning of each and every sentence. Okay, that's a bad habit too. You can avoid this by practice, okay? And if there's silence, you don't have to fill it. Just let it stay there. The silence can be so powerful in a talk. Right? Okay. And the other two, we use the word okay and right in teaching a lot. That's fine. But in a public talk, try to avoid them as much as possible. Unless you want to make sure that the audience understands something. But try to avoid them as much as possible. Right. So, just keep in mind, silence can be used in a talk as well. Then the eye contact. So, how many seconds should we keep an eye contact on a person? What do you think? I have given a guideline or a trick to use. Okay, what happens if you have a crush on a certain person? Huh? You must have had a crush on some person at some point in your life. So you know what I'm talking about. So if you have a crush on a person, you want to look at that person, but you don't want that person to know that you're looking at him or her, right? So you want to avoid eye contact with that person, but at the same time you want to have a look at his or her face for a bit, right? So it's like 2 seconds. So if I keep my eyes with the person more than 2 seconds, it's going to be a bit awkward, right? Isn't it? Yes. All right. And less than 2 seconds would be, it's not going to be effective either. All right. So I just do like that. All right. It's going to be a joke. So don't do that. And if you have a larger audience, you can't have eye contact with single individuals. If you have a large audience, have eye contact with parts of the audience. If you have a small audience, have eye contact with individuals. But don't let it run more than 2 seconds or 3 seconds. Okay, just keep that in mind. All right? Okay. Then you know exactly what to do. Okay, this is very common. I thought this is very common among girls in Sri Lanka, but 2 weeks ago I found this to be very common among boys as well. Okay, don't do it. Don't fake accent. When you fake accent, it sounds like you have constipation. You know what happens? Have you tried talking while having constipation? That's exactly how you sound like when you fake accent. Don't. Accent is the last thing you want to worry about. There are so many other things that you have to worry about of using a foreign language, right? Accent can be improved in different ways, but that should not be the starting point. The most important part of your speech is clarity and whether or not the grammar is right enough so that the message is delivered correctly. Okay? So don't do the accents, right? When you do accents, you can't speak fast. You have to be very slow, and sometimes you forget to fake the accent. Okay, then so you switch between accents. That's going to be a total chaos. So don't fake the accents. Right. And when you are about to do a presentation, rehearse. Rehearse, rehearse, rehearse. That does not mean you have to learn everything by heart, right? You don't have to memorize each and everything, but you have to rehearse. You know what happens when you memorize each and every word, right? If you're stuck at one word, it's really hard to remember the next one. All right, then you're going to be stuck in the middle of your speech. So don't memorize anything, just rehearse. And if you have a tendency of forgetting things, all right? And if there's no way to use slides, something like that, use what we call cue cards. Small cards that you can keep in your hand with the points written on them. Not the sentences, but the points written on them so that you can have a quick look, and you don't forget anything, right? Okay. But rehearse, rehearse, rehearse. In fact, okay, I think I forgot to mention one thing. Have you heard Hitler speaking? Have you heard Hitler speaking? No? At least on YouTube, just go, search. You know who Hitler is at least, right? Okay. All right, listen to what Hitler's saying. We have no idea what he's saying. He's speaking German. I'm sure that I doubt if there's anyone who speaks German here. But when you listen to that person, you get the message, what he's trying to say, right? He inspired millions of people to kill millions of other people, isn't it? Right? And you might not know, actually, he used to be a very shy person when he was young. Okay, he had stage fear, we call that, right? So he was afraid of talking in public, and how he overcame that is by talking to a mirror. Okay? So he did that. That was kind of a rehearsal. So he did that. He spoke to himself on a mirror. Then he became a great speaker. For good or bad, he was a great speaker. Right. So do that. And when you do this presentation, be relaxed. Okay? Now, relaxation comes with the hint of relaxation comes with your voice and your facial expressions, your movements, and things like that. Okay? I'm not going to talk too much about being relaxed. You understand what I'm saying. But you have to be relaxed in your voice, in your facial expressions, in your body, in your movements. Everything has to be relaxed. And again, rehearse a lot, especially with timing. Have you listened to TED Talks? Yes? Okay. So TED Talks are timed. Okay? If a TED Talk is given for 12 minutes to a person, that person has to finish exactly at 12 minutes. And that can be achieved only by time rehearsing. Okay? And most of the presentations that you do when you come back to the university after the industrial training are going to be timed. So you have to rehearse what you're going to say, but also you have to time rehearse. Okay? Right. So just, if you're not quite familiar with the TED Talks, just watch them. And they don't rush. Most of the speakers, most of the TED Talks are not rushed. They're not quite slow. They are perfect most of the time. And the timing is extremely perfect. And the jokes. You can make jokes, even in your final presentations. Okay? Well, your audience might be boring. Mostly your audience is going to be staff members, right? Yeah, they might look boring in day-to-day life. Okay, that they are nice people too. They like jokes. Okay? They like jokes, especially when they're drunk, but also maybe in a presentation too. So, it's okay. If you're good at making jokes, try them. If you're not good at making jokes, don't. It can be awkward. Okay, you have to know, there's an art of making jokes, all right? If you're good at it, try it. Believe me, they're going to love it, okay? But it has to be related to what you're actually talking about. Otherwise, it doesn't make sense. Got it? All right. So don't be afraid to make jokes. And this is also related to the previous thing I said, being intimidated by the audience. So most of the audience that you're going to have as an undergraduate is going to be someone who's superior to you in knowledge. Your supervisors, your bosses at the industry, and so on. Okay? So just be yourself. You don't have to be intimidated by that, by them. Okay? And you might say that it's easier for me to say now because I'm a staff member or a lecturer, but I was never intimidated. When I did my first presentation when I was in my third year at Peradeniya, and I was never intimidated actually. I made jokes. I challenged my supervisors. It can be done. All right, just have to do it in a cool way. Right. So don't be intimidated by your audience, your supervisors, your teacher. And this is very important, and this is something that you always forget, no matter how many times we have told you. Don't put too many words in slides. It makes people boring, okay? Think of your audience as a set of children. Okay, I guess any of you haven't had any children so far, but we do, okay? And children love listening to stories, okay? So what we do is reread the stories and they look at the pictures. Okay, if we give them the book to read, the line by line, they wouldn't do it. So people like listening while looking at pictures, right? Pictures in the sense, something to visualize, all right? So please use as less number of words as possible. And never put, so you have to have words, but never put complete sentences on slides, okay? You can put phrases, that's fine, but not complete sentences. The audience is there to listen to you, and your slides is not the most important thing. You are the most important person in the presentation. The slide is just a prop, okay? It's just going to help you to deliver your message, right? So just keep in mind, people are there to listen to you, and you can use the slides just to help them to understand what you're saying, okay? Right, so less words, more pictures. And what happens when you put sentences on a slide is you're going to be a newsreader, you're going to look at the slides, you're going to say exactly what's on the slides. So you don't have to do the presentation, you could have just emailed the slides, right? Why would they come here to listen to you if you're going to read the same thing as on the slide, right? Okay. And even if you don't have any sentences, don't look at the slide that much, okay? You always have to face the audience, you know these things already, and move around, as I've explained that earlier. And this is very important, especially when it comes to research presentations. If you put something on a slide, you have to know exactly what it means. You can't put things that you don't know about on your slide, okay? You can speak about, but not on the slides, okay? Right, so you have to be responsible on what you put on the slides, and you have to make sure that they are correct, and you know what exactly they mean, right? So know your material, especially on the slides. And at the end of the presentation, people are going to ask questions, right? And answer the questions. And you have to be honest. Most importantly, if you don't know the answer to the question, just be honest, okay? And if you need time to think about the question, let them know. Ask them, is it okay if I take a minute or two to think about the question? That's fine, all right? You have to have your rapport with the audience. And if you're smart enough, you should be able to come up with the prospective or the possible questions beforehand and have the answers on the backup slides. Try that. People will love it, okay? So try to guess the questions beforehand, because you can't put so many slides within a given time frame, right? There are so many things you have to talk about, but you can't cover everything. So you can have an idea of what kind of questions you can expect. Have the answers on some slides, use them as backup slides, so if they pop a question, you can go directly to that slide and answer the question, all right? And you'll come out as very smart. Try that. And sometimes you give an answer to the question by an audience member and they disagree, and there can be some sort of a heated exchange. That's fine, as long as it's not a heated exchange. It's okay to disagree with your audience member, that's fine, but you have to stop it somewhere. That's why we have the chairpersons and rapporteurs in a session like that to intervene in such occasions, but you should be able to handle that as well, okay? So you don't have to agree with each and everything they say, even your own supervisor. If you have a different opinion, you can oppose that, that's fine, Okay? But be honest and move on. And after a heat exchange, you might get angry, but you can't. Okay? The audience can, but you can't. You are the most important person in the audience, not the audience, in the session, so you can't be, okay? You can't lose your temper. You have to smile, but genuinely. Okay? You can't genuinely smile if you have a little bit of anger. Okay? All right. So you have to let go things. You have to calm yourself down. Keep your temper and smile. And always try to visualize data. So avoid using tables with a lot of data. Okay? People don't have to read numbers on slides. You keep slides for a few seconds most of the time. Okay? Maybe at most a minute, and that's not enough for people to listen to you, to process what you're saying, and at the same time look at the numbers. Okay? So that's why we always use graphs. Okay? Which helps to visualize what's going on quite easily and quite fast. Right? And avoid using laser pointers. I think this has a, yeah. So this can be very distracting, okay? And it's not nice. If you want to point something on the slide, you know that beforehand, just put an arrow or something on the slide itself, okay? When you make the slides. So please try to, this was done earlier days, but nowadays people avoid that because it's very distracting and it's really hard to locate the laser pointer sometimes. And most importantly, use the slide numbers, because if the people have questions, they can refer to the slide number and right? So things are not awkward. Right. And when you make slides, you have to make sure, just keep in mind, as I said, you are the most important part of the speech or the presentation. The slides are just a prop, okay? So the slides should be very simple, and each slide should have only the information that need to be there, okay? So don't put the logos and flashy backgrounds which distracts the people, okay? So if you're doing a presentation, for example, if you have returned from the industry and you want to put the logo of that particular company, just put it at the beginning or at the end. You don't have to put it on each and every slide. Right? You can properly acknowledge them at the beginning or at the end, but the other slides should be as simple as possible and should be as less distracting as possible. Okay? So this is the one with the cross is not a good idea. Okay? But the other one is quite simple. And also there's one more rule which sometimes I tend to violate. During the daytime, it is advised to have a light color as the slide background, and in the evenings or in the night, it is advised to have black as the background of the slide. I usually like having black, okay, so most of the times I use black, even though it's the daytime or the nighttime, but it depends on the facilities that you have, okay? Right, most of these days you can use black as well, because the projection systems and you have the LCD screens, which can show all the colors without too many problems. Right. That's it for today. You must be happy, right? You get to get home. Yes. Right. But before that, I wanted to share one more story. Do you know this person? Katalin Kariko. Anyone who... Okay. So she's a scientist in medicine. So she spent more than 20 years at the University of Pennsylvania. It's a prestigious university in the United States. And she had applied for so many grants, and her applications were rejected, or the grant applications were rejected over and over again. And if you work at a US university, you need to have grants, otherwise you're not tenured, okay? And several times she was demoted. That means she was a professor, then she was made an assistant professor, and so on. And she was never made a permanent member of the staff. But she kept working. And you know what happened? She won the Nobel Prize in 2023 in medicine. Okay, despite all these obstacles. So what I want to say is this. When you do research, you are bound to fail. If you get the result in the first, the second, or the third, or even the 10th attempt, if you get the result that you wanted, there's something wrong. Okay? You're not supposed to get the result that you expected in the 10th attempt. You have to try several times. Research is about failure. You get it done, you get it right only once. Okay, for the first time. It takes so many trials, you know that. Especially as undergraduates, you can afford to fail. All right? And I think this is one of the mistakes that supervisors do, that the research has to have the expected outcome at the end, but it is not so. Most of the research is bound to fail. Okay? I'm not sure about the agriculture, but in my field, we spend billions. I do physics. I'm a nuclear physicist. We spend billions of dollars. We don't get the result. In fact, the research work that I'm dealing with right now is a 40-year-old problem. Okay, we have spent billions of dollars. The detector that I'm working with, it cost like $2 billion, but we fail all the time, right? So don't be afraid of failure. Just continue working. As long as you are committed to what you're doing, good things are going to happen to you in your life. Okay? Just as it happened to Kathleen Carrico. Okay. Right, so that's it. Oh, it's 11:30. You get half an hour break. Not a break, actually. I finished it half an hour before. So you must be thanking me for that. But any questions that I can answer? Again, I didn't want to cover so many things in the research because you haven't started research work much, okay? Maybe what you're going to do with the writing and, yeah, mostly writing is a separate discussion that you should have once you have actually started research. But since you're going to the industry, I want to focus more on what you're going to have to do at the industry. Okay? Right. So that's about it, unless you have questions. Lunch is not served, right? No questions. Wow. Okay. I know exactly what I'm going to tell my students on Monday. I don't know. At my faculty, it's really hard to finish a workshop. There's so many questions. I don't know. Really, yeah. But these are third-year guys, right? Okay. Okay. I understand. In the fourth year, actually, they throw questions. They pop questions. So many questions. But let me give that advice again. Don't wait until you are given a topic for your research. Don't. If you're going to get something that you don't enjoy or not interested about, you're not going to love working with it. So just think of a topic. Even if you have something now, just think about it and go talk to a supervisor. That's fine. It's totally fine. Okay? And even in the first semester of the fourth year, try to do some project. Try to work in a lab. You guys have labs in the faculty, right? Right? Yes. So try to work in a lab. Just go talk to a supervisor. They would really love young guys coming and doing work on their own without forcing. So just try that, please. We do in fact, I told Dr. Chompika earlier that there's a mini project component in most faculties, but apparently you guys don't have. But you can have a mini project by yourself. Okay, so try to work on something, then you can continue working with that as your final research. So that's my advice. That's a suggestion, not an advice. That's a suggestion. Right. Any questions? Yeah, no questions, it seems, right? That's a pointless question from me again. Right, so thank you. And I should thank Dr. Champika and Ms. Rini for organizing this event and the quality assurance cell. I think the term quality was in the topic, right? I didn't talk about quality. I actually hate quality assurance. I have worked closely with the quality assurance cell at this university. So I know what's going on in quality assurance in the university system, so I hate it. Okay? I even hate the word quality. Anyway, that's just between us. Anyway, thank you again. Have a nice day. Thank you.
Good day to everybody, but going opposite to what Dr. Sadira has mentioned, I'll be using the podium to deliver the word of thanks, right? So, first of all, I would like to thank Dr. Sadira, very big thanks for him for joining today's workshop as a resource person, and his participation was we have anticipated from the beginning, but Dr. Champika was the person who coordinated with him, so I'll be thankful to him as well. And I would like to take this opportunity to thank the Dr. Anusha Vijayasekara, the Faculty Quality Assurance Cell, and as well as Professor Ruan Deepika from the Quality Assurance Center of our university. And also big thanks to the audiovisual unit and it's all the supportive staff and all, and everybody from the computer center who helped us to stream out the process and all work. And first and last, I would like to thank all the students who participated here for this workshop, because of course you all were the target group, but without your participation, without your enthusiasm, we won't be able to do a successful workshop, right? So very big thanks to you all as well. And to sum up, I would like to invite Dr. Champika Pereira to hand over the token of appreciation to Dr. Bandara. Dr. Bandara, I invite you to cordially to receive the token of appreciation. Thank you very much, Dr. Bandara. So, without taking further time, I suppose that everybody has gained at least something from his workshop. So, we would like to sum up today's fruitful session, and thank you very much for participating. Thank you all.